Welcome to the Explainer. We're going to get into something pretty interesting today. An idea from our source material that suggests our whole economic system, it might not be the end of the line. It could just be one chapter in a way, way longer book. All right, let's start with this quote because I think we can all feel this one, right? It's that gut feeling of wanting to protect what's yours, what you've worked so hard for. You just don't want to let that go. And that feeling, that's what makes it so tough to even think about questioning the whole system. Right? It's everything. It's the water we swim in. How do you even start to question that? So that brings us to our first big idea, the world we know. The source material we're digging into really asks us to stop and think, why does capitalism feel so inevitable? Like, for a lot of us, it's not even a system, it's just reality. But what if that's just an assumption? What if it's not the whole story? Because the text we're looking at argues that, well, if you rewind the clock, history paints a completely different picture. All right, let's do that. Let's take a quick tour of what came before. Because long before capitalism was the main event, people organized themselves in all kinds of ways. And this is the key thing to see here. You've got these different stages. Capitalism isn't this permanent thing that's always been here. It's just the latest step in a long sequence. And you can bet that back in the day, feudalism probably felt like it would last forever too. And what's really wild is how different the goals were. In feudalism, it's all about who owns the land, who your parents were. Then you get mercantilism, and it's this mad dash for gold controlled by the state. And then you have communal systems, which are playing a totally different game, one based on sharing and taking care of each other. So this is where it gets really interesting. The source argues that there's this one thread, this unspoken connection that runs through all those previous systems. And it's this. At the end of the day, people had to rely on each other to survive. Now, let's be real. Today, we are more technologically advanced than ever before. It's not even a debate. The things we can do, it would look like magic to our ancestors. But are we more connected? That's the question the source throws at us. With all our progress, have we lost something fundamental about community, about looking out for the group? And for an example of what that could look like, the text points to a lot of indigenous communal systems. These are societies that worked for centuries, without money being the central point of everything. It was all about balance, contribution, trust, and cooperation. That was the glue. Okay, so if these other ways of living existed, how did we end up here? How did capitalism become the system? Well, the source argues it's a more complicated story than just the best idea won. Yeah, the text is pretty clear on this point. It argues that capitalism's rise wasn't just driven by innovation, but also by force and exploitation. It's tied up with some of the darker parts of our history. And here's what that looked like, according to the source. We're talking about conquest and colonization. We're talking about completely disrupting those indigenous systems, taking land and resources, and crucially, using the forced labor of enslaved people, all of it fueling this relentless drive for profit. Now, the source makes this observation, and it's pretty blunt. The point being made here is that a lot of wealth wasn't just created out of thin air. It was taken from systems that were already working. So, what does all this mean for us right now? Well, it leads to a pretty powerful idea. If history teaches us anything, it's that no system lasts forever. They all change. So why would ours be any different? Think about it. Feudalism gave way to mercantilism. Mercantilism gave way to capitalism. So what does capitalism give way to? That question mark at the end, that's where we are now. History suggests something has to come next. And that's really the core takeaway here. All systems evolve, or they get replaced. The idea isn't that capitalism is bad or good, but that it's just not the end of the story. It's the chapter we're in right now. A huge, world-changing chapter, for sure, but still just a chapter. So, that leaves us with one last big question to chew on, right from the source material. As we think about what's next, what's the next chapter going to be built on? Which of our basic instincts is more essential for our future? Competition or cooperation? Definitely something to think about.